media is all the rage. My name is Sheridan Ganger, Director of Marketing here at Symphony Talent. And on behalf of our team, thank you to everyone on the Zoom meeting for joining us today. I'm very excited about today's lineup of media experts, so let's get rolling. I'm thrilled to introduce our first speaker, Symphony Talent's own Lauren Nelson, who serves as our Vice President of Solutions Engineering. Great to see you, Lauren.
Hello, great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Joining Lauren is Bill Borman, founder of the True Recruiting Conferences, which are attended and followed through social media by some of the world's leading thinkers and practitioners in social media and recruitment. Welcome, Bill. Thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome, Sheridan. It's good to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Fantastic. Well, before we jump into the presentation, I just wanted to remind everybody that our goal is to make this interactive. So your questions are absolutely imperative. We have our experts working in the background to join, manage the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag Symphony Talent. We will also be opening up the presentation for Q&A, which will be held at the end of the webinar. So please submit your questions through the Zoom Q&A function, and we will be sure to get to those questions throughout the event and at the end of the webinar. So that's it from me. Now I'll turn it over to Bill.
Yeah, hi. Thanks very much for that, Sheridan. Welcome everyone for taking your time out and listening in, or anyone who's watching, anyone who's actually watching the recording. Thanks for taking the time out to have a look at what we're doing. As Sheridan said, I'm Bill Borman. I'm the founder of True Conferences. I do lots of different things in and around the recruiting space, and one of the areas that I've been hearing more and more conversation about, and hearing the term more and more, has been programmatic, which is kind of, and I've been given various descriptions of it, from the mysterious to the almost Wizard of Oz type algorithmic solutions to advertising. And I met with Lauren at True London when Symphony sponsored True London, our premier event in London, and we had a discussion as part of a track session around programmatic advertising, and I asked Lauren some questions afterwards, when we were having a discussion about programmatic, and really came to the conclusion that we should be sharing this to take some of the mystery out of exactly what programmatic is. So Lauren, thanks. It's good to be back into the conversation. I want to kick things off really with the first question for anyone scratching their head and saying, is programmatic just another one of those buzzwords which we hear about in the marketplace? So how would you define programmatic in layman's terms?
No, thank you, Bill. And so the way I think of it, and I do think of most of the things in fairly simple terms, is think of me trading stocks from home, okay? I sit at my home computer and I research, I plan, I watch CNBC, I monitor the ups and downs of the market, and then I make my trade, okay? So as smart as I may be, or not, I really can't effectively compete with the major investment firms that are programmatically buying, selling stocks in a matter of milliseconds. So it's really the same principle. I used to sit with clients once a year and plan a media strategy. What sites to contract with, what worked, what didn't. Now, that constant evaluation is being made in milliseconds rather than once a year and after the money's been spent. So one of the reasons, I like this picture here, though, because for all of this technology with programmatic media buying, it's still important to understand there are still people that are watching over it and kind of turning the knobs and moving the levers to keep making sure that the media spend, the budget, is being optimized to meet each individual company's goals. So I hope that helped my best shot at layman's terms.
In layman's terms, we're really talking about media buying electronically and reacting to the market in a way that would be, let's not say impossible, but extremely difficult for a team of humans.
Right. So think about, programmatic, think in the sense of that you strategically predetermine what factors, if and when they happen, would cause for an adjustment of strategy And programmatic platforms then have that kind of programmed into them to be able to react to these things in real time as they happen, as opposed to somebody looking at the analytics, after the fact, and then, meeting reactively with the client to try to decide, well, should we try, even if we could, to make any type of adjustment to the strategy.
And just the market really work nowadays like share trading, where, for instance, if you were a commodity broker and there was a cold snap, which might take out your corn, it would affect the price of corn. Is media buying behaving in the same way?
Well, I think that what it does do is it's actually allowing the media to all compete for the client, for the company's budgets in the best way for the companies to get the results they want. Okay, so it's actually allowing kind of this online auctioning on a pay-per-click model. So media are being challenged now to deliver the results on what actually is delivering clicks, and that's where the income's going to come from, and where they're going to get the lion's share of budget dollars, proving success in real time, versus let's set up an annual contract and we all hope it works.
Excellent. So what sort of things would affect the price I pay at bid if I'm buying media?
It's basic laws of supply and demand. So, the auctioning is, the more people that want to reach a specific type of demographic, job function, location, etc., the more that it can drive up the cost per click to go for it. But, because it's based on that cost per click, it is being paid on performance, not expectation.
Got it. So it's not an advanced price; it's a price paid on a performance model.
Correct. Yep.
Excellent. I think that definitely clears up some of the questions for us. So if we take that from the people who are important in the market, I can get that. I can get that from a talent acquisition point of view. That I'm giving you my budget, I'm giving you my dollars or my pounds or my euros or my rupees or whatever currency
right.
I'm trading in, and you're making it work for me. But what does it actually mean? What does all this mean to candidates who are on the receiving end of programmatic marketing?
Yeah, I think it pays huge benefits to the candidate. So it's really all about relevance. Okay. So with all of the data that's out there and can be found to target different job seekers, different candidates, think of it this way: citizens get nervous about privacy when it comes to their government, right? But consumers, as consumers, we expect to have a relevant and personalized experience, right? So think of shopping on Amazon. You like that they're suggesting content based on your behavior. Now, why should we have the life-altering decision of where to take your career be, somehow less than choosing a book to read or selecting a hotel to stay at? So I think the candidates are really benefiting from the programmatic media targeting, delivering, to them the right job information, that's appropriate for them.
So we're really talking about delivering in layman's terms, we're really talking about delivering the right job to the right person at the right time because they've been targeted. Correct.
So, and we can be talking in terms of both jobs and, job postings as well as banner displays. So, whichever you're doing, and you can think of job postings being more for a active job seeker audience, whereas banner displays can be more for a passive seeker audience.
And is it just advertising, or would you also target content in the same way? And I'm thinking of things like Facebook sponsored posts or updates or kind of modern ways of distributing stories which will drive eyes to your site.
Yeah, it's absolutely, we consider social as a channel of media. So all of this, being distributed out programmatically can also involve, getting, sharing the content out to the right user. So again, you have these different balances of postings on job sites are going to drive more of a active job seeker audience. Postings out on social are going to drive more of that person who is researching, and they're they're learning about what their options are through social channels.
Absolutely, and I definitely get that, and I get it from the point of I've been asked a lot of times over the years really what social recruiting is and what's the difference between recruiting and social recruiting, and has recruiting always been social? I think once we started adding in the social media and distribution, it really is advertising to an audience of one and making sure exactly as you said within e-commerce in terms of the consumer experience, making anything if content or ads are hitting the wrong people at the wrong times or the wrong audience, it's considered spam. If something's hitting people at the right time in the right place, it's considered convenient because
Right.
it's taken action that we want. And it sounds to me like through the programmatic bidding, you're actually delivering that ad or that piece of content to the right people at exactly the right time.
Right. That's what we're always striving for. Exactly.
Excellent. And you made a point on the slide in terms of nurturing the relationship. Nurture is a word we hear talked about a lot in recruitment and recruitment marketing, especially nurturing the relationship through continuous and relevant content. What do you actually mean by that?
So, the idea that somebody is going to just learn about a job opportunity and instantly be moved into a position of strong consideration from both sides, isn't necessarily realistic, especially for that passive, hard to find talent. You need to just nurture them over time with content that is just moving the needle in terms of them considering taking their career, over to your organization. So, it has to be more of a relationship, not just a, hello, let's spend the next 10 years together.
Absolutely. And I think in the research that I've carried out with some of the clients that I work with, we've found the average hire, and I'm talking about hires being something different to the average applicant. The average hire has followed the organisation in some way, consumed content in some way, maybe visited our career site multiple times and looked at lots of different jobs, usually for an average of 7 months before they've actually applied.
Absolutely. Right. There's a lot they're doing out there before they even come into and start, looking at specific jobs.
So if you're nurturing me and we're having this relationship and we're communicating, I'm clicking on things, that's going to change the way in which I apply, and that when I'm applying, I'm not a stranger to you. That there's some kind of data and information on me in terms of relationships. So from what you're seeing now, if we're talking about the normal candidate in the market, what's the usual route to hitting that apply button?
Yeah, so roughly we see with the companies we work with that you can roughly break it down by thirds. Okay, so Indeed and other aggregators acting as media bringing traffic into the site, which then gets them into the jobs, or usually directly, as this example here, Indeed leading people straight into the job description and then into the apply process. But there's also direct, people just knowing to type the URL directly in is roughly a third. And then also search, so Google, Bing, Yahoo, etc. Now, a lot of our clients, they tend to be very well-known brands. So I do keep in mind that can skew these numbers a bit, because it drastically improves the amount of direct traffic if you're an organization that is very well known kind of in the consumer industry space for the type of traffic you're trying to hire.
Yeah, so are you thinking that if somebody's well known, that traffic is more likely to come from, say, Google with someone saying, I know the brand, I know the name, I just want to go to the career site and jobs rather than necessarily aggregate.
Absolutely, yeah. With well-known brand names, what we find is either there's a high amount of direct traffic. People just type, thatcompany.com, careers, and they come directly into the site. Or through search, what we see with well-known brands is that the vast majority of the keywords that are driving traffic, into the process from search are words that contain the company name, because so they already knew what they wanted to find. They were just using the search engine to get to the right place to start the process. But something we also try to focus on, as you were kind of talking about at the beginning, is what is that entire route? Okay, so not just the final trigger that led to the apply. So for example, social content is huge. So even though I didn't really list it out here as one of those thirds, it's a huge contributor that gets people to the point then when they're going to reach the trigger that starts the apply. So whether it's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc., people are exploring and researching. Glassdoor is actually something we've really been seeing coming on strong as a factor, and not just as the research arm, but also coming on strong lately in driving traffic directly into the job descriptions to apply. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that's something that I'm definitely seeing when we talk about social media. I think if we look at the way in which attribution has been made in terms of source of hire, whenever I've sat down and looked at social media, it's usually the attribution you've seen is between 3 and 5%, which would suggest probably we shouldn't be spending a lot of time and money on that based on the attribution. Once you dig under the surface or get someone who does real tracking, what's actually being tracked is the final click in the apply process, which was the point usually when you end up at the career site and you hit the apply button,
right,
and not all of the wooing and the nurturing piece that's gone on before that. And I think actually being able to develop analytics and tracking to understand nurture, as opposed to understanding apply, and understanding that relationship between nurture and apply, is whatever people decide to do going forward is going to be critical for organizations in understanding what's working for them, what isn't, and where people really come from.
Right. I mean, we think of that in terms of an omni-channel strategy. The idea that you want to be tracking the data of what's happening through the entire process, all the different touch points that people are experiencing as they're getting to that point where there's the final trigger that led to the apply. I mean, obviously we care about the final trigger, but it is so important. You can't just think of it in terms of the relationship. Like you said, the nurturing started right at that point.
And how easy is that actually to do? Because historically that's been a manual job, which has been not the easiest to connect from people looking at our content or starting to follow us on Twitter or going to a tweet or watching a YouTube video, for example, and then ultimately ending up at the career site. How easy is it to track that journey now?
Well, what it takes is kind of a consolidated approach. So the idea that how your social content is getting managed needs to have the same consistent tracking tags on it as the media, as the career site is tracking through the applicant tracking process, and then pulling in the hire data file even to track the success and the route all the way to hire, not just the initial trigger to apply.
So the identification and the tracking of a person is coming long before they've hit that apply button.
Right.
Without giving away any secrets, because I understand you can't, from the clients you're tracking now, are there any patterns that you're seeing that are different?
So, I mean, in terms of patterns that are different, as we've been able to advance the tagging and everything, seeing the amount of nurture research that goes on by candidates through the route has been very enlightening to the importance of that content. And then in terms of specific metrics talking about, is this, what are we trying to track on? We've been doing programmatic for about 4 years, okay? Over that time, we've been moving clients from kind of standard media, contract buying, over into programmatic, and we've seen over a 50% reduction in cost per hire, okay? And one thing I want to stress is that it's over that time, we didn't take our clients through a immediate leap all the way through. We spent the years in a very methodical, adjustment, measuring the success, continuing to optimize and keep moving in that direction. Now we've recently launched our newest programmatic platform, and the early returns are pretty exciting. So one of the things, because it's early in the process, we're seeing, what you're seeing here is what we did traditionally as programmatic. So here the month of February, and this is for a global, biotech company, seeing what we did programmatically in month of February, and then what we saw in the first month of activity in March with cost per application. Now, because there are some variations, we have to kind of focus on some of the averages because things like budgets and things were not always exactly consistent. But we're pretty excited to see the reduction here in the cost per apply. And then here, another example. This is for a global customer service and BPO provider. The previous programmatic that we've been doing over a span of 324 days, and the results here, specifically focusing on that cost per application and apps per day, now inside our new environment over a span of 23 days, and the significant change and improvement we've seen on those metrics. But those metrics aren't...
I've got a question, Lauren.
Yeah, Bill.
If I could jump in for a second. I've got a question that's come in actually from my friend Marvin Smith. Marvin is the king of communities. I think lots of people know Marvin, and he's asking you a question, which might put you on your heels, which is, will your model one direct media and search fill all of your positions? And he's left the comment, in my experience, this approach will fill up to 80% of your jobs. There will still be around 20% of positions that are hard to fill positions that may require very focused recruiting. And knowing Marvin's background, I think he's talking about the difference between search, i.e. actively going out and bringing
Sure.
people rather than waiting for the people. And he was asking what your thoughts were on his comment.
No, I actually would completely agree. It doesn't put me on my heels at all. We don't try to look at any one solution as the silver bullet that's going to, solve everything. I think that what we're seeing is programmatic is really helping to make budgets far more efficient. And we're also, well, I'm going to just touch on this for a second, and I want to address it later too. We really are also looking to make big gains in measuring on a quality of apply by media, not just the volume. But going back to your statement, absolutely. I mean, we don't see that there's a big change that we're trying to create from, say, 20% plus coming from employee referral. We also, think that there is still a place where, not just still a place, it's a very strong direction of where we're going as a company in terms of CRM capability being able to help, search efforts where recruiters are having to very hands-on kind of go through the proactively finding the profiles and the people that are right for these positions. So yeah, by no means is do
that must be how you do the sourcing approach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so it's fine. It's really going out and saying, I think what we've all seen in recruiting is there's no silver bullet. There is also paths that work well for some organisations or even some recruiters. Some recruiters are great at filling up 80% of their pipeline through referral. In some positions, it might be 50, 80% that are actively sourced by sources. Some might be 100% filled by programmatic or advertising, but it is finding that blend. I think the most important point here from what you're saying is actually having the right tracking in place. So thanks for your question, Marvin. If anyone else has got,
Thank you, Marvin.
If anyone else has got any questions, please put them in the question bar. We would like to keep it interactive. And back to you, Lauren, on what you're seeing.
Yeah, so a couple of points. I mentioned talking about quality. I just kind of want to touch on that. So what you're seeing in these metrics are, again, kind of the early returns. It hasn't even enough time to go through for people to be getting hired. But we're making big gains. We're very excited about the idea that we can take in the application data and use artificial intelligence to inform on the media, on the programmatic media buying, which media is not just delivering volume, which is good to know, but which media is delivering the quality. So you have media A delivers 5 times more quantity. That's great. Media B, though, delivered a higher percentage of quality matches, and the quality is done by taking that application data that we tracked coming from which media, have AI match that up against the job rec, and then programmatically be informing the platform which budget dollars to shift towards where it can be, where we can see it's delivering more quality. So I think that's to the question of what metrics do we want to go at. We're super excited about that direction.
So you'd say, whether you're working with you or working with anyone, any recruiters or talent acquisition looking in, they should really be concentrating on that quality of applicant.
I think that's like the first question our clients come to us for. And so, like I said, we're excited that the gains we're making in there, because we have, again, a lot of our clients, Bill, are very high brand name clients, and some of these clients, like, quantity is not an issue.
Yeah.
People are knocking on their door.
Which I don't think it ever is. My argument has always been it's not so much for war for talent as a finding problem. That's not been an issue. And in a lot of organizations, we're actually seeing increases of volumes. However, what we're seeing is anything up to anything from all kinds of research sources, anything up to 95% of people who have actually applied being considered unsuitable or unqualified to apply. So I think anything you can do to fix that problem or work towards continually improving the quality of people who apply is actually better for everyone, because the less people we have in that pipeline, the better the pipeline is, the more time we can spend with them, the better the experience, and the more likely we'll get the right person. I've heard hiring described recently as a Game of Thrones experience, where the volume is so high, we have to put in we have to put in steps which aren't necessarily relevant. We might say, right, okay, we've had 400 applications, therefore we say somebody has to have a degree, because that cuts it down to 200. And then we say, well, that degree has to come from Stanford, because that cuts it down to 50. And when you question it, say, what is that measure delivering you the right person? It's no, but our funnel can't cope with 200 people. We have to make it 50, right. So we're applying arbitrary rules. So anything you can do on the quality end of making sure it's just the right people applying, and recruiters have more time to spend with people, I think the better.
And the recruiter time is really key to that, because going after quality has been a very manually labor intensive business of recruiters having to scour through, as you mentioned, hundreds of applies to find that right person. What we're doing also now is to help use artificial intelligence to help inform the recruiter, like, here's everybody, but here's the top ranking by relevance through artificial intelligence matching to your job rec. So both the back end recruiter experience and the front end media experience optimization is informed by artificial intelligence to find the best quality. So
yeah, well, I think most thought leaders definitely demonstrate what could be described as artificial intelligence. But in layman's terms, what would you actually say artificial intelligence is to somebody who doesn't necessarily understand?
Having the computers take from historical data of matches and hires and matching the what the application profile data looks like and how well it matches up to not just open-ended keywords through the site, but also the relevancy of the words throughout the job description. So having a computer do the first pass at quality checking, and then that empowers the recruiter to invest more of their time strategically in, weaning it, taking it down farther, not starting from scratch with the idea that all 400 applications are equal.
Okay, so I can hear the recruiters' teacups rattling and the china getting smashed across the world. How would you say a machine match measures up against a person match?
Actually, wow, great question. We did a few tests with our artificial intelligence where we used some of our clients, with their permission and their cooperation, we used some of our clients' applicant tracking that we were doing. We were their applicant tracking system. So we were able to work with them on their historical data and the people that, the recruiters ranked highly manually and the recruiters hired. And we ran our artificial intelligence kind of retroactively against that same candidate pool. And we had a 78% match to it. Now, 78%, if you're in high school, that sounds like a C. But first of all, AI matching would even be starting at like a 90, being considered practically perfect, because you also have to go with the assumption that it may not have always been the best candidate that actually got hired.
Which is the reality. I think this is the fear people have over machine matching and algorithms. It's two things. One is if it's taking care of some of the matching and producing the same results, are we going to have the same problems that we've had in the past? Now, I think that situation is really reaching a point where people trust the technology enough to trust the results when they don't look obvious.
I think there, Bill, that's where you have to look at, is the job description written in the best way and communicated in the best way to be attracting the right talent? Because that can be the other side of the coin, because the AI matching on the job description, we need to make sure that the job description is appropriately being communicated, for the needs of the position, what the hiring manager expects, what the culture of the company is, in order to, because the AI is going to match on that job rec.
Exactly right. So are you finding with all this new technology, are candidates behaving any differently to how they have done in the past?
I think that the candidate behavior is drastically different over the past several years due to access. So all of the options that a candidate has to glean information about an organization. Now, with the explosion of social media, I would sit in a lot of meetings with both the marketing folks as well as HR, and there would be initial conversations around the word control. We believe you can't control all of that information, but you can.
Hallelujah, that somebody's actually saying that the concept of control and the concept of command and control is really one that came out of the Office playbook, I think.
Right. So you can't control, but Bill, so I hope I'm not going to rain on your parade with this, but we do believe you can steer it, right? You can't control the information, but you can help steer the conversation that's happening out there, right? So for this example, we developed a viral campaign for Unilever over in London, specifically targeting millennials, and getting that information, that content out there. So when that job seeker, that candidate, is doing their research, be thinking, what do we want them to find? And also, you can think of it in terms of just in the physical space, get out of digital for just a moment and think of a person standing in line at their favorite retail store, wanting to buy their product, right? You can, with point of purchase signage or other ways, point them in the right direction on their mobile device to learn about working at your organization and about the jobs. And these people can be doing this before they even reach the register, right? Me, I'm an older generation. I don't multitask quite as much, but the idea that today's job seeker, with this access being so at their fingertips, let's take advantage of it rather than have any concern of it.
Yeah, exactly right. I think the point when I was cheering, you didn't rain on my parade at all, is I think the concept of control is quite an old one. It comes from the command and control era of management. But the concept of influence is something completely different, that you can influence behavior and create the right relationships. And I think the more that we can do that in the hiring process, the more we take away this being a game of hiring, of kind of last man or last woman standard, the more we make it about a collaborative process, influence, giving you the information you need to make the right decision, the better that's going to be for everyone. Now, I do have a question that's come in from an anonymous viewer. Who's going back to the previous slide, the spend per year, given that the spending is consistent each month for MCloud, would be around, or is more than 50% more expensive to run overall, despite the CPC is lower. Am I missing something?
Well, it's not a CP. That's not a CPC. That rate there that you see, the 1441 compared to the 687. That's
it's just jumped in with CPA.
Yeah, the cost per apply. So again, because budget spent may not be consistent, a lot of times with the tracking, we're trying to look at kind of those averages across, because so we're tracking kind of the performance, knowing that budget or job volume variance could be in play.
Right. So this is a cost per apply.
Right.
Rather than a cost.
Not a cost per click number, right?
Yes. So that's the first answer to that. Is it cost per apply, which is naturally higher than what your cost per click would be, to be more effective, and also that it's across multiple medias. Anything else you want to add to that? No, I hope, Mr. Anonymous, that answers your question.
I hope that answered the question. Yeah.
Yeah. But if not, please just ping us another question, and we will try and answer that for you. And anyone else with questions, please come into them. So you pretty much look at everything feeding off the career site, whether that's your social media, the place where people go to apply, whether that's your Indeed, Glassdoor, LinkedIn pages, your advertising on places like Monster, Randstad, Career Builder, and so on. So what's the real benefit of having everything feed off the career site as opposed to being able to apply in the various channels?
Sure. Well, we were just talking about control. So your career site is actually a place where you really can control the content that's being out there with more effectiveness than maybe some different panels. So in this example here for Northwell Health that we have the privilege of working with, this is how we present a job description. Okay. So it is full of relevant content beyond just the qualifications of the job. So your career site, you can track in there the click activity of the individual user, and then even personalize the content of your site based on that activity. Okay, so you can do it based on either click behavior or based on the user's location, or now even as you collect any information inside a CRM or ATS, personalize the experience of the career site to make it the most relevant you can based on that information. The other thing here is, you see, I kind of lined up the some of the common media drivers that go straight into job description, right? So big change that kind of happened with the job aggregation. Well, when we look at career site activity, less than 2% of users view a page of content. Okay, so I'm not talking about like going through the job search process. I'm talking about just looking at a page that talks about how great it is to work in, say, information.
How great we are, and here's our
right, how great we are and how great it is to work in information technology, right? So that page is going to get less than 2%. But the jobs are getting more than 18% of all user views inside the website, right? So we want to take all of this great content that companies have and get it into the job descriptions, but it's, again, being very important, making it relevant to that job, to what that job function is for. So that video on here is going to be a video about information technology, but also recruiting events at the bottom, Bill, you know, all the social content feeds off of their hashtag, all of that kind of condensing this experience into what is essentially this consumer buying moment. Where
so what we're really talking about here, whether, you know, whether it's Symphony or anyone, is actually having the content within the landing pages dedicated to the job, and seeing that people are searching for jobs rather than necessarily companies in terms of their behavior at the moment.
Yeah, so if you think of it this way, Bill, on a career site, again, these are rough numbers, okay, but half of all entry point into the career site comes on the career homepage, right? Okay, that's great. But a lot of people might think that would have been 100%.
So that's the lobby or the front door.
Right, that's your front door, okay? But, okay, using that analogy, you know, a house has multiple doors and ways to get into it. You know, I come into my house usually through my garage, or, you know, it's got a back door. So depending on who you are and what your where you are in the process changes where you enter the house. You know, my kids' friends always come through, they just walk right through the garage door instead of knocking at the front door. So that's what's happening now. Job seekers coming directly into the job description as opposed to the front door. So half the users are coming directly into the job description. So a lot of companies, they have their content being managed by their own company's marketing department, you know, outside of HR. You know, marketing says, hey, you know, we'll set you up with a couple of pages, and then they'll just link to the applicant tracking system to view the job data. And that's where we think there's a big miss in the marketplace. The idea,
so whether it's Symphony or wherever you go, anyone really be thinking about creating per job landing pages which aggregates the right content in one place.
Right. I mean, Bill, think about a job description, okay? What you see on, and I'm not picking on anybody because it's kind of prevalent through the whole industry, what you typically see on a job description, you know, powered, you know, through various applicant tracking systems, are a page of content that looks like it could have come off a typewriter, right? It's just black text on a white piece of paper. It just happens to be on a computer screen now. We really think the industry has to move a lot more towards relevant content being right there at that buying point of deciding, do I want to apply for this job or not?
Yeah, I'm thinking of it now, more of what I'm talking about is around job branding versus employer branding. That employer branding for attraction, top end of the funnel. I had this conversation with Universal this week. Top end of the funnel in terms of bringing in is the employer branding, but increasingly almost like consumer-like behavior from candidates is job branding around the job. How is this job going to help me? How is this going to enhance my career? Is it going to make my resume or CV look better? Is the person I'm going to be working with actually going to be the person I'm working with? Are they actually going to be teaching me things and developing me? It's like the job brand versus the employer brand, and making sure you've got both covered. And that's really why I think the dedicated landing page is exactly the approach everyone needs to be taking.
Yep.
So what do you see then? We're talking about recruitment marketing. What's the optimum route and number of steps to get from viewing to completing an application, do you think?
Yeah, I love this question. It was a little bit tricky in the way I thought about addressing it with you, Bill, because as far as the route goes, there's actually too many options to try to control where they go prior to entering the site to begin the application process. So what we think of it in terms of, what you can do is to work on ensuring that, you just mentioned it, that consistent employer brand message is being shared in this omni-channel experience. So here we have the picture of, that ideal candidate somebody wants to find. We no longer are trying to decide, where do we think this person is going to be out on the internet, okay? Now we can track just wherever this person shows up. That's where we want to attract them, because we can be essentially notified when the person with the right traits we want to target shows up at any of these different channels, and then we start them on their route to the apply. And then in terms of number of steps, this is where I really wanted to wrap my head around it. I think a big change in philosophy is going to have to happen. If you think about it, we don't expect to move a consumer from that first moment that they're introduced to a product to buying it in a single act. So in the same way, you could think about, we actually might be wanting to add steps. So to get to the best passive talent.
That's a really interesting point. That almost flies in the face of all the things we've been talking about from a candidate experience point of view, of saying narrow the steps.
Right. Because
make it really easy. And this was one of the points I wanted to come out of this discussion. Is you're actually saying maybe we need to add steps.
Right, but not to make the process more arduous, but to make it more nurturing, to kind of go back to what we were saying before. So instead of expecting, like, remember I mentioned before, instead of thinking you're going to go from hello to let's spend the rest of our lives together.
Hello, please apply.
Yeah, it's a hello, what's your name? And then, let it go from there. And then you have your next meeting, and then your next meeting. So start with just 30 seconds of just learning who they are and the ability to get in touch with them again, and then nurture them along the process, gathering more and more information along the way, as opposed to expecting, hello, now spend the next 45 minutes filling out all of these fields to tell us everything we could possibly want to know about you, frankly, before we've even said hello to you. So that's where, as we talk about nurturing, that's where I think that kind of change in it goes. So I just want to be clear. I don't want to make the process more arduous. I want to make it more of a relationship when I talk about changing the philosophy.
Okay, so I've got an anonymous viewer coming with another question for you, which I think is a very relevant one for the current market. With a growing number of people concerned about privacy and cookie tracking, what happens when an increasing number of people use browsers in private mode or browsers designed to protect privacy? Then what's going to happen?
Yeah, I think that those people are going to decide on a balance of that privacy, which, like I mentioned, it was one of the first slides we were talking about, Bill. The questions was, privacy is extremely a sensitive issue in terms of the, their governments. But I would ask that person who's turning on their, block all their cookies and everything, when they go shop on Amazon, do they have that on? Do they not log in and tell Amazon? Do they not complete a profile in Amazon so that Amazon is able to, hey, based on what you looked at, here's other products that you might want to consider. When people, it is a balance of privacy versus relevancy. You can't have anything relevant to you if you won't allow any acknowledgement of your interest. So it is just that balance where people are going to find.
I think there's two important factors to this. One is that people have the option, so they can do that.
Absolutely, sure.
So we're not dictating it or tricking people into things. I think the other thing is people are prepared to make a trade-off. And the example I would give is, if I want to read a Washington Post ad, while I don't have to do it, I get the option to turn the ads viewer on while I'm reading that post. And it's kind of like the Washington Post saying to me, if you want to read this, if you want to read this, I'm prepared to accept some ads during the time, although I'm going to turn off my ad blocker again at the end of it.
Right.
And I think it's the same thing of saying, if I think it's relevant, if I think it's going to be helpful, I'm willing to give you it. The other point, I'd say, you know, if 50% of the people want to have the standard experience that they get now, and 50% of people want to have a better experience, we're making the experience better for 50% of the people. Those people who don't have that experience are making their own choice. On that.
And I also want to deal with that question too. It's such a good one on both ends of it. So first of all, programmatic media buying is not just dependent upon cookie tracking. So when a job seeker, let's say, goes to you know, Indeed or Monster or wherever, they go to a site, when they search on a keyword search on that media, they're telling us of their interest. They didn't tell us who they are. They just told us of their interest. So sponsoring the jobs programmatically to that interest, the user told us, even though they might be blocking their cookies. So it doesn't stop programmatic media buying. It just, you know, shaves off some of the effectiveness of some of the demographic targeting. The other side of it that I want to approach to that question is that's why we're also building out where the personalization of relevant content delivery, I mentioned before, can happen from CRM or ATS application data. So again, in this model where maybe the users turned off their cookies, they're not letting us know anything about them until they're interested in saying, here's my email address, I have an interest in your organization.
No, I'm ready to start.
Now we can start providing a relevant experience to them based on both, you know, email marketing to them, obviously with their email address, but also putting relevant content into the career site experience, because essentially they've logged in just as a user logs into Amazon. So we can kind of approach that very important issue from both sides.
Yeah, and I think the anonymous viewers also asked within that, or made the comment, a lot of people don't have that in mind when looking for jobs. Is there anything you'd add to that? Or?
I'm sorry, Bill, it was hard for me to hear that. Was that, you're asking me something else?
He said a lot of people don't have that in mind when looking for jobs.
You mean turning on or off their cookies? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just decided a long time ago that I don't worry about it. I realize marketers are out there targeting me, and the funny thing is I actually kind of like it, because when I see, you know, ads or relevant content on a website being delivered to me, I prefer to get more relevant content. So I recognize it's a balance.
Excellent. And on that, Marvin Smith again has asked, one of the tenets of content is to provide content that's relevant and valuable to the target audience.
Absolutely. Yeah.
From Mervin's community background. So nurturing is to provide that relevant and valuable information to our target audiences. What non-job or non-brand related content have you found effective in nurturing and building relationships?
Great question. I mean, actually, I don't mean to sound flippant by this, but actually everywhere. So I'm gonna go back a couple of slides to address that question. So that was kind of the point of this slide, is that it's not about us deciding, hey, we think CNN or ESPN or the Seattle Times or Facebook is a better place to try to advertise. It's about identifying the persona or kind of the demographics of who you want to attract as the best talent for a particular job function. And then wherever a person with those attributes goes on the internet, you can then, you know, approach them with a media message. So the next time you go to CNN.com and the page is loading, think about it, Bill, everything that's happening in those 2 seconds that the page loaded. What happened is, from the initial request, data warehouses are tracking who is it that is actually requesting this page load from CNN. They're tracking their own data warehouse of all of the demographic attributes of that user coming into the site. They are then notifying marketers like us, hey, we have a person coming into CNN with these attributes. Would you like to bid on that ad unit? We then bid on it, we win the auction, we place the ad unit, dynamically building the creative to that targeted user's demographic traits, and serve the ad unit to the user, all in that 1 second that it took the user to load the page on CNN.com.
Okay, that's cool. I think I've also got time for one other question that's come in. M asked, you mentioned you have a new programmatic platform. What does this mean for clients and candidates? And what's the difference between this and the last platform you were using? Maybe we want to answer that.
Yeah, so like I said, we've been doing programmatic for years. So we've just launched MCloud. It's our new media buying platform. And what we can do with it is, in addition to all the advantages of programmatic that we've been talking on this conversation, is our MCloud is now based on, think of it this way, automatic programmatic. So it all happening in real time as the media is running, but also the we, by job function, we set with our clients a value. Just think of, you know, from a scale of 1 to 10, what is the priority of this job function against your budget? So setting that 1 to 10 value allows the programmatic media to be automatically distributed and continually balance and level itself to your budget priority, but also all automatically to the job volume that you're posting your job recs into your system with, into your ATS with. So if you add 100 new jobs suddenly on a particular location or job function, the budget and the campaigns will automatically shift to that change of job volume in relationship to that job priority and budget. That was my.
I think anybody wants a more detailed answer to that, or anyone who's just curious, we can definitely arrange. I'm sure Laura will be.
Thanks, Phil. That was my best shot at a 30-second explanation.
So send us an email on that, and we can maybe answer that question more specifically.
Yeah.
So just the last question, I think.
Sure.
Point, because we've got just a couple of minutes left. What percentage of applicants now do everything on mobile? We've heard people talking about mobile. I think if you don't have a mobile strategy, you're probably watching the wrong webinar. But if you're watching this on your mobile phone or your iPad or your smartphone or your interactive driverless car, what percent of candidates are you finding are actually coming via, are now using mobile, including the apply process?
So another good question I had to kind of wrap my arms around with it, Bill, is, you know, one, to point out, in the States here, 51% of all internet use is now on mobile, okay? But in other countries, you know, across Asia and other countries, it's far, far higher than that. But what we're really looking at is more of this multiple device usage that goes on, okay?
Yeah.
So I'll give it I'll try to do this quickly. A great example, company QVC. You know, everybody would kind of just think of them as the TV shopping channel. But what happens with their model is, yes, the person's sitting there on the couch watching the products on TV, but they're sitting there with their laptop or their tablet on the e-commerce website to buy the products, but they're on their smartphone, either talking to their friends or on social media, or they're calling QVC to ask questions about the product. So it's a multi-device solution as part of this omni-channel relevancy that does it all work together regardless of what device. So I hope that helps.
I applaud that more than enough. I think I've sat through lots of conferences and looked at lots of problems where we've been banging mobile first. I don't disagree with the mobile talk, but at the same time, what I'm equally seeing is people saying, "Oh yeah, but what about?" And suddenly we've gone down a flashing mobile application, and our desktop application becomes rubbish. Quite often what we found when we've looked into it for companies is the issue has been the apply process, not the device.
Right, right.
And we've
Because
had to change the apply process and then make it work on where the device is coming from.
right, because 30 minutes of trying to type on your thumb with your thumbs on your mobile device to complete an application is not very engaging.
If you've got a 100-question questionnaire anyway, it doesn't. I can do it with a pen and paper. It doesn't make my experience any better.
Right, exactly.
Which I think is exactly right. So I think we've come to the end of time. It's been an excellent conversation. You've earned your 30-second pitch. So tell us who you are and what people might want to do next if they want to come and have a look at Symphony.
Oh, thanks. Sheridan, I'm not sure if you wanted to, but I can kind of chime in with that.
Lauren, dive right in.
Okay. We're super excited about what we're achieving at Symphony Talent. We are looking at this whole omni-channel experience of, whether it is, candidates coming through different devices, finding them through different media, utilizing artificial intelligence to just completely keep trying to improve quality, in addition to, the watching the cost per on a quantity basis, is where we're making a lot of exciting, I think, changes in the marketplace to bringing it all together for our clients. So Sheridan, if there's anything I left out. Please,
Sheridan, over to you. Do you want to close us off and let us know where people can get a recording?
Absolutely. Thank you both for such a wonderful webinar. I learned a lot, very insightful, very engaging. Thank you, Bill, for joining us. Lauren, thank you again for your expertise. This event was recorded. We will be posting it up on our blog as well as our resources page. So if you have a friend or colleague that is interested in learning more about programmatic media, we'll be sure to get you this webinar via email, and you can also find it on a variety of our channels. We will be continuing the conversation around artificial intelligence next week with guest speaker Madeline Lorano at Aptitude Research Partners. That webinar will take place on May 4th at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we're titling that "Embracing AI as a Talent Acquisition Enabler, Not a Recruiter Killer." So continuing
and she's good people, so listening to Madeline. She is good people.
She is good people. So we look forward to seeing everybody at that event. And as Lauren mentioned and Bill mentioned, if you have any questions regarding the conversation today or want to learn more about Symphony Talent, please feel free to reach out to myself directly, and I will put you in touch with the right people. So thank you, everybody, for your time today. And we look forward to seeing you next week at our AI webinar.
Thanks for listening.
Sheridan. Bill, great talking to you again.
Likewise. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you now.